Okay. Assalamu alaikum. Alhamdulillah, wa salatu wassalamu ala rasulillah, amma ba'd. Okay, so we come to the last session, the last episode of this tafsir class. So inshallah today we will conclude the tafsir of Surat al-Kahf. And if you remember last time, we finished the story of Dhul Qarnayn, obviously as well the story of Ya'juj and Ma'juj, or the portion that is related to Dhul Qarnayn. And now, inshallah, we come to the conclusion. And the conclusion, I mean, it's not too hard. If you read it on your own, I'm sure it's like self-explanatory. But inshallah, we'll look over certain themes and certain meanings. And inshallah, if you have any questions about the surah in general, today, inshallah, we can also do that. And you have the WhatsApp group as well, so you can pose questions later as well. So we can, I think, start from verse number 99, right? You could say that from ayah number 99, now we talk about the Day of Judgment, all right? So this now passage, and you know, it's not a distinct separation between the story of Ya'juj and Ma'juj and the Day of Judgment. For example, if you look at the ayah 99 specifically, the first part of the ayah might imply, and certainly some scholars have taken it to be related to Ya'juj and Ma'juj. So when it says, وَتَرَكْنَا بَعْضَهُمْ يَوْمَئِذٍ يَمُوجُ فِي بَعْضٍ, the question is, what is it referring to? We left them, right? And it doesn't say like two groups or two tribes. It says بَعْضَهُمْ. So you can imagine them, intermingling together. And it says يَمُوجُ فِي بَعْضٍ, like waves of people. So it's like a wave. Mawj is like a wave. But here you see waves and waves of people mixing together. So this could either be referring to Ya'juj and Ma'juj alone, or to people on the Day of Judgment. Because you know, on the Day of Judgment, everybody will be collected together. All right? So it says here, وَتَرَكْنَا بَعْضَهُمْ يَوْمَئِذٍ يَمُوجُ فِي بَعْضٍ. Even the scholars like Ibn Kathir mentioned, this could be referring to the Day of Judgment itself, and when everybody comes together, including the jinn. So it's not just the human race, but also the jinn. And وَنُفِخَ فِي الصُّورِ, right? And the trumpet will be blown. So no doubt now, the Day of Judgment has started. When the trumpet is blown, then this is no doubt the beginning of the Day of Judgment. Okay? There is a narration that mentions the angel who blows the trumpet. His name is what? Anybody knows? Israfil. Very good. Israfil, if you want to say it right. Israfil. Okay? And there is also another narration. I mention it because it really shows us the urgency of life. That life is not that long. That life is very short. But not only the shortness of life, but also the urgency of life. So in this hadith narrated by Abu Sa'id al-Khudri and Ibn Abbas, so two companions narrated this hadith, the Prophet said, alayhi salatu كَيْفَ أَنْعَمْ, how can I be comfortable, right? How can I be comfortable? How can I like settle down and be comfortable? كيف أنعم وصاحب القرن قد التقم القرن. And you can imagine, he said, the one with the trumpet, meaning Israfil, like holding the trumpet, ready to go, right? Hana jabhatahu, like he's lowering, like when you're gonna blow, you lower your front, and waiting for the order, waiting for the command from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to tell him, do it. So this hadith kind of help us picture this theme, the urgency of this life. And people, I see people, two types of people, right? One type, they take life urgently, right? And there's another type who do not. Like they're so relaxed and laid back. And I'm not saying you should not relax, but like I'm saying in general, there's nothing important to them. There's nothing urgent to them. Everything can wait. You do it tomorrow. They procrastinate so much. This was not the case of the Prophet ﷺ. The Prophet ﷺ was, we can tell from the first type. Okay. Now in that also ayah it says فَجَمَعْنَاهُمْ جَمْعًا, and then we gathered them. We gathered them all together. جَمَعْنَاهُمْ جَمْعًا. There's an emphasis. The fact that everybody is gathered. And this actually is mentioned quite a bit in the Quran. This scene from the Day of Judgment. Like in a different ayah, it says, إِنَّ الْأَوَّلِينَ وَالْآخَرِينَ. The first people and the last people. From the time of Adam, the first civilizations, right? And the last ones. Everybody is collected on the Day of Judgment. Everybody is gathered. مَجْمُعُونَ. And in the surah earlier, if you remember, one of the interludes, we talked about the Day of Judgment. One of the interludes in the surah, if you remember, mentioned the Day of Judgment, and it says we resurrected them, we gathered them, and we did not leave anybody. So everybody is gathered. No one is left out. Okay. So that is the first scene. This is al-jama', we can say. If you want to give it one word, we can say al-jama', the gathering. That's the first thing that happens. Well, one of the first things, right? I mean, obviously, there are a lot of signs in nature that we read about in other surahs. What happens to the sun, the moon, the stars, etc. But as far as what happens on earth, this is one of the first things that happen when the trumpet is blown and everybody is collected, everybody is gathered. Okay, so the next scene we can say, ayah number 100, this is when Jahannam is shown. Okay, so this is when the hellfire is shown. Now, this is different from the punishment. This is before any punishment. This is still in the beginning, right? So the hellfire is shown to everybody. There are various narrations related to this. In one narration, and I'm not saying we can necessarily picture how that happens, but it says that the hellfire will be like taken or even you say dragged. I don't know if this is the right translation, by 70,000 angels. Oh, hold on. There'll be 70,000 zimam, like a place where you can, drag. And in each one, there's 70,000. So a lot of angels. Again, I mean, this is not necessarily how we imagine something being dragged, but just to give you an idea how vast and how big. What is important, as the ayah mentioned, is the fact that it will be shown somehow. So this is in the beginning. After people are gathered, this will be one of the scenes that the hellfire will be shown to people. All right. Now, since the hellfire is mentioned, right? Since it is mentioned, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will tell us maybe two reasons why people might end up in the hellfire. Again, this is not comprehensive. It just shows or gives us a bit of what type of people might be in there, or like what kind of behavior could lead into the hellfire. So one, as the next ayah says, 101, الذين كانت أعينهم في غطاء عن ذكري وكانوا لا يستطيعون سمعا. You find this also a lot in the Quran. So here it says, those who had like a screen on their eyes, right? So they couldn't see. Now obviously this is not like literal or physical in the sense like you don't have an actual physical screen. But this is referring to people who refuse to see something. Okay? If you look, for example, in the beginning of Surah Al-Baqarah, like maybe the second page, something very similar is mentioned. It says, وَعَلَى أَبْصَارِهِمْ غِشَاوَةٌ. On their eyes, there is this haze. So it's not, in one case it says a screen, like ghita is an actual screen. And ghishawa is when you cannot see clearly. There's something coming in between, making their eyesight a bit hazy or fuzzy or something like that. But again, this type of blindness, if you like, or screen is human caused. Like it's caused by your decision, right? So some people choose not to see, right? It's not forced on them. And also, وَكَانُوا لَا يَسْتَطِيعُونَ سَمْعًا, and they could not hear either. So this is not referring to someone who's deaf physically or naturally, born with that deafness. Rather, they choose not to hear. They choose not to listen. If you go back again to Surah Al-Baqarah, just to compare, in the beginning of Surah Al-Baqarah, it says, خَتَمَ اللَّهُ عَلَى قُلُوبِهِمْ وَعَلَى سَمْعِهِمْ. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala put a seal. He put a seal on their hearts and their ears. Here it says, they could not hear. So you see the similarity. But again, this is something that people would choose. Or you could say, even if they don't directly choose it, it could be a consequence of something, a result of something. Like due to a particular action, or maybe the recurrence of a particular action could cause people to deviate and not be able to hear the guidance. Okay? So that's one type, you could say, or one behavior that would cause people to go to Jahannam. The other one is kind of mentioned in the next ayah, 102. And essentially is talking about idolatry. أَفَحَسِبَ الَّذِينَ كَفَرُوا أَن يَتَّخِذُوا عِبَادِي مِن دُونِ أَوْلِيَاءَ. Those people who disbelieve, they are taking my servants as God instead of me, right? Or besides me, min duni awliya. So this refers to anyone who is worshipped besides Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And it doesn't have to be a human. Like in the case of Isa, Jesus, that's an obvious case. But let's say if somebody worships the angels, right? That's also applicable here. So anytime you take a creation of Allah as a God or as a divine being along with Allah. Okay. And there is an emphasis at the end of ayah number 102 that Jahannam will be the nuzul. So nuzul is like a place where you, usually a nuzul is like a guest house, right? If I'm the host, I invite you to my house, that's a nuzul for you. If you want to know the word itself. Now we go into ayah number 102, 103, 103, 104. There's another type of people that might end up in the hellfire. All right? So again, we see certain behaviors that could lead into the hellfire. And this one is interesting. It's not as obvious. So the first two types, somebody who refuses to listen, someone who refuses to see the truth. So like they're aware of it maybe, but they refuse to abide by it. Or someone who takes an idol besides Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. You could say those are clear cases to some extent, right? But this one, he said these are even worse losers. So these are bigger losers. Al-akhsarina a'mala. Those are worse losers. Or the worst even. Al-akhsarin, so the worst. When you say al-akhsar, it means the worst. Now, why is it the worst in this case? It says those who have been misguided in this life while thinking that they are doing good deeds. So that's a different category. Those people were doing something. Like the first type, they refuse to listen, they refuse to obey, they refuse to see, so they're not even doing anything. They're not trying to do anything. They're not even trying. The second type, they might be worshiping idols, but again, it's not like they're not even devout. They're not putting a lot of effort. But this third type, these people are working hard. But the problem is, they missed the target. If you want a similar ayah, you might remember if you memorize Surat al-Ghashiyah. In Surat al-Ghashiyah, you might notice in the beginning, there's this description of those people. It says, عَامِلَةٌ نَاصِبَةٌ. They work so hard and they exhaust themselves. Nasiba, like you exhaust yourself in those actions. But again, it is misguided. So, some people trying to mention some examples of who could it be, but Ibn Kathir said this is a general category. This ayah applies to anyone, he said, anyone who worshipped Allah, but upon a method that is not warranted, that is not revealed by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. You can come up with any way you like, right? You claim that you worship Allah, but you're not using the right method. So he said, anytime you do something, so for example, you can think of bid'ah, like somebody who wants to worship Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, but they're not like following, for example, the sunnah of the Prophet ﷺ. They come up with their own ways. So he said, anyone who worships Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, but using a deviant way or a way that is not accepted or approved, while thinking that they are correct. So they're being deceived. They think they are correct, right? But in reality, they're not. They think that their action is accepted. They think that their deed is accepted, but it is not. Their actions are not accepted. So this is why it's not like necessarily that they're worse than the first two types. But it's worse in the sense that they put so much effort, but it's not accepted. That's where it is. That's why it's the worst loser. He says the worst losers because they're putting the effort, but it's not paying off. Yes.
Okay, so I guess I'm really confused. So is this referring to a believer who's doing? Is it a believer who's guided but then is doing everything wrong, or is it the person who is already on this guidance who thinks they're doing good, that, but everything, regardless, falls
It's more general. That's what I think Ibn Kathir is trying to say. Like anyone. Yeah, so it could be, for example, somebody who... So there, let me give maybe two types. One could be more severe than the other. It could be somebody who their beliefs even are incorrect, but they think it is correct. And therefore anything that comes after could be incorrect as well. Or it could be someone who has a true belief, like they have the true, what do I say, creed, the true theology, let's say. So they believe that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is one. They believe that only Allah is worthy of worship. But when it comes to how they pray, they don't care. They don't look and see, for example, how the Prophet prayed, alayhi salam, or something like that, or anything like it. I mean, it doesn't have to be specific worship like prayer, but anytime they're trying to get close to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, they don't do it right because they don't put the effort to learn it, for example. That's a lesser, example. But the first one also is applicable. I mean, anyone could claim that they are monotheistic, but they don't have to be, for example. And by the way, like I said, any of these categories, it's interesting. Any of these categories, you see some parallel in the Quran. So we mentioned, for example, Surat Al-Ghashiyah, Amilatun Nasiba. Those who do so much, but it doesn't pay off or it doesn't give you the return you expect. Another ayah, just in case you encounter, because inshallah when you read, I hope when you read the Quran, you start seeing, recognizing these parallels. Give me a second. In Surah Al-Furqan, it says, وَقَدِمْنَا إِلَى مَا عَمِلُوا مِنْ عَمَلٍ فَجَعَلْنَاهُ هَبَاءً مَنْثُورًا. We came to all the actions that they have put forth, and we turn it down. All like we made it into vain, something vain, like manthura, also like something that is dispersed by the wind, to show you how light and insignificant. So you can interpret that ayah very similarly to this ayah. Yep. Sorry, I'll come back to it. Do you guys need a mic, by the way? So far, so good, yeah. Okay. So the question is, there might be some sects who think they're right, but they may not be right. So I guess the question is, and this actually touches on an important point that scholars discuss rigorously. It's called al-udhr bil-jahl. Do we, for example, excuse somebody because of their ignorance? Ignorance, is it an excuse? That's basically the question. Can we consider ignorance to be an excuse? So, for example, I did not mean for my action to be incorrect, but it happened to be incorrect because of my jahl, because of my ignorance. Is that pardoned or excused? Yes and no, because some ignorance is excused. For example, you try your best, you reach your capacity, whatever, like you tried your best, but still you have some shortcoming and you could not arrive to the truth, but you tried your best. We believe in that case, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, yes, will excuse that, will pardon that, will forgive that. But if you don't put any effort, right, or you just follow what your village did, for example, right? In the Quran, it mentions several times that this is not an excuse. You say, oh, whatever I saw my forefathers do, I'll just do. Blindly. We call this blind following. That is not an excuse. But if somebody put their effort, and we know a lot of people try their best to learn about the right religion, for example. They're not even Muslim, they haven't never heard of Islam. Or anything, monotheism even. Let's say they live in some island, but they try their best. They investigated, they looked at all of the accessible knowledge they have, and let's say they could not find the right sources, or they found part of the truth but not the full truth, we're sure that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will be forgiving, because Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, He told us in the Quran, لا يكلف الله نفسا إلا وسعها. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will not put a burden on you. He will not ask you to do something you cannot do. He will not overwhelm you. All of those things are there. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala at the end is very just. These ayat are not for us to judge people, by the way. It's rather a warning from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to us that just be careful, because this could be one of the ways that you can be misguided. And unfortunately, some Muslims might take those ayat and start judging people. But rather it is a reminder to us that those are ways we should be careful of, we should avoid, right? And the first message when you read this should be, what if I am one of those who I should be careful? That's how the Sahaba, by the way, used to read the Quran. If they read a verse about hypocrisy, the first thing they say is, what if I am a hypocrite? Nowadays we say, I'm going to use that to judge you. Like, you are a hypocrite. It fits you perfectly. The Sahaba were not like that at all. In fact, the best Sahaba, like even Umar, imagine Umar ibn Khattab used to go to Hudhayfa ibn al-Yaman and beg him, because Hudhayfa was given the secret, who is a hypocrite and who's not. Something that only Hudhayfa got from the Prophet ﷺ. Umar would go to Hudhayfa and beg him, please, just tell me, did the Prophet mention me under the hypocrites, as one of the hypocrites? That is a true believer, because they really want to improve themselves. All they concern themselves with is, I want to make sure I am not falling into this, instead of using that as a reason to attack someone else, or to judge someone else, or to doom someone else. Likewise here, we all can fall into this error, maybe not in a grave way necessarily, but we all are, fallible, right? We're fallible, right? So this should be a warning to the reader, the one who's reading this ayah or these ayat. It should be a warning to you first and foremost, before we start looking around and see who might be fit, who might fit in this description. And you can do this comparison. If somebody is worshiping Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and he has this or she has this fear that I might be doing it wrong, don't you think this person will do it more correctly than someone who doesn't care, or who doesn't even cross his mind that they could be doing something wrong? Who's going to learn it better? Who's going to go and seek the right method? The one who has the fear, not the one who doesn't care, right? So that's how we always should approach Quran. Okay. How much time we have? 7:30 we stop usually, right? Okay. All right, so I'm not gonna stop at each and every verse, but again, if there's any a question or anything like that, please stop me, or you can ask at the end. But you could see that the next two ayat are basically still talking about the hellfire or the behavior that can lead into it, but it doesn't necessarily invoke a new category. Except maybe, let me mention, at the very end of 106, there's maybe you could say another category, which is اتخذوا آياتي ورسلي هزوا. So those are the people who mock. Those are the people who make fun of the ayat and the rusul. Ayat are the, you could say, the revelation itself, or the signs of Allah. So it could be like the scripture, the Quran, the hadith, or the messengers. And it says in plural, not just Prophet Muhammad. If you make fun of any prophet or messenger, it's the same offense. So this is a different type. Those who take all this lightly, all this matter of religion, of revelation, of prophets and messengers, they take all of that business as trivial or something insignificant or to be mocked. So this, huzwa is like ridicule, mockery, right? That is, you could say, a different category. We have also that type of people who never take anything serious, especially when it comes to these matters. And not only that, they mock it, they make fun of it, they ridicule it. Or they might ridicule as some aspect of Islam. But we have to distinguish, because sometimes people might mock some aspect. They may not know it is from Islam, but they might mock someone who is adherent to Islam. For example, and I'm here being very, what is the right word? Lenient, maybe? This is a concept of when religion, when Islam becomes very strange. Like people are no longer aware of the details of Islam. At some point, maybe not now, a lot of people did not realize that the beard was, for example, from the Sunnah of the Prophet. So some might, and it happens so often, you might have seen maybe examples of that, where people make fun of the people who have a beard, who grow a beard. And it happens in some countries more than others. Only in an extreme case, obviously, where this, people are no longer aware of what is Sunnah, what is not Sunnah. They might do it thinking that this is not from Sunnah or Islam. But in general, anyone who makes fun of not just Islam in general, or the scripture in general, like the Quran in general, or the messengers, but also anything the Prophet did. So here when the ayah says, اتَّخَذُوا آيَاتِي وَرُسُلِي هُزُوًا, those who took my messengers or our messengers as an object of ridicule. So those who took the messengers as an object of mockery and ridicule. It doesn't just mean that someone is mocking, for example, Prophet Muhammad. Obviously that is not a Muslim. Someone who does it is not a Muslim. It also includes mocking something that the Prophet did. That's what I'm trying to say. So anything the Prophet did that is documented authentically, obviously, that is documented in the hadith and the sunnah of the Prophet ﷺ, and someone might mock it, that is also part of this. So that's why it is like a different category of people, those who do that. And I think it is clear why. Because obviously someone who mocks something, they don't really put it in high regard. They're disrespecting it. And these are like very important symbols of Islam, like the Prophet, the book, right? There's a clearer ayah, I think it's in Surah At-Tawbah, where it says, قُلْ أَبِاللَّهِ وَآيَاتِهِ وَرَسُولِهِ كُنْتُمْ تَسْتَهْزِئُونَ. Say, and by the way, there was a reason for that, revelation for that ayah. It happened at the time of the Prophet ﷺ, that someone was mocking the companions, not even the Prophet, but the companions of the Prophet. But he was saying those people, all they do is they love to eat and they party, something like that. Like he was mocking not just one companion, the entire, the whole body of the companions. So this was also regarded similarly as such, that this is taking, because these are like the companions of the Prophet. They are the closest, the friends, the associates of the Prophet. So just be careful of that. Something else also I want to mention, ayah number 105, where it says, لا نقيم لهم يوم القيامة وزنا. We don't give them any weight. What does that mean? Weight. On the Day of Judgment, those people are not given any weight. If you like, maybe to give it one angle or one meaning, that doesn't mean that that's the only meaning. There is actually a hadith narrated in this regard that helps us understand this word, like why does it mention weight? So in this hadith, narrated by Bukhari, it says that on the Day of Judgment, like a big, huge man will be brought, but he does not weigh he weighs less than the wing of a mosquito. What does that mean? It means that, at least on the Day of Judgment, no attention is given to your physical weight. The attention is given to your deeds. So if your deeds weigh a lot, then you're in good shape. You have some good outcome. And just to give you an extreme, in this hadith, it says, imagine someone who is very big, a lot of physical weight, but no weight whatsoever when it comes to their deeds, right? Okay, so now let us switch to the other camp, if you like, and these are the people of Jannah, the people of the paradise. There's only 2 ayat about them, so there's not much given as far as their qualities or their behavior. Obviously, there is mention in other ayat, other surahs. But because the Quran, so one characteristic of the Quran, it's called mathani. You might have seen this in different ayat, where it says that Quran, one of the descriptions of the Quran is, it is mathani. Mathani basically is a plural of mathna. Mathna is 2, like a pair. The reason it's called that, the Quran is called mathani, is because usually anytime something is mentioned, its counterpart is mentioned, its opposite is mentioned. For example, if the Quran mentions good people, it will also mention evil. Or if it mentions good, it will mention evil. If it mentions Jannah, it will mention Jahannam as well. So that is the meaning of mathani. So it comes in the themes in the Quran come in pairs. All right? So, but because this is going to help us when you compare, like you could say good is good enough, right? I can just look at the behavior of the people who are considered good people. But you won't see it as well if you don't see the opposite. There's a saying in Arabic, it says وَبِضِدِّهَا تَتَبَيَّنُ الْأَشْيَاءُ. When you see the opposite, then the matter becomes clear to you. Only when you see the opposite. For example, I can sit here and talk about light all I want. I can describe light. But until I turn off the lights and you see pitch dark, total, complete darkness, then you understand light much better. In fact, you appreciate light as well. You experience it. So this is why it is, and this is the nature of the human, we learn by looking at the opposites. Again, you can learn enough, you can learn a bit about this and that, but when you see the opposite, the matter becomes much clearer. Okay? So this is why you see this in the Quran all the time, almost all the time. A description of good, then a description of evil, or vice versa. So here, it's not necessarily always an equal weight. So we see many more ayat talking about Jahannam versus like 2 ayat talking about Jannah. So let's quickly talk about those 2 ayat together. It says those who believe and do good actions. This is always the case because Islam, we say, is a religion of moderation. In the sense, it's always balanced. So it's not enough just to believe. You have to believe and do good actions. It's not enough to do good actions without belief. In other religions, they might say, faith is enough. My faith in this or that will guarantee my salvation. Or you might see the opposite. You might see some people say, my good actions are enough. It doesn't matter who I believe in. You hear it even among Muslims. They say, I don't steal, I don't kill, I don't do this. right? So they're focusing on the actions. They don't even mention belief. But the best discourse, the best path is to combine the two. To have belief and to have good actions. And the nature of the human requires that. When you have a good belief, it will prompt you, it will induce you to do good actions. And when you have good actions, it also affects your belief. So it's kind of cyclic, it's iterative, if you like. Each one contributes to the other. So this is why you always see in the Quran that those two are always together. Believe and do good actions. Those will earn كانت لهم جنات الفردوس نزلا. Those will earn al-Firdaus. Al-Firdaus is a name of Jannah. It's one of the names of Jannah. In some narrations, it says it's the highest level of Jannah. Or maybe the middle and the high levels of Jannah. In one hadith, very authentic, in Muslim, in Bukhari and Muslim actually, it says if you ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala for Jannah, then ask Him for Al-Firdaus. If you want to ask for Jannah, ask for Al-Firdaus because it is the highest and the middle of Jannah. Or the high level and the middle level of Jannah. The next ayah, خالدين فيها, they live eternally, forever in it. لا يبغون عنها حولا. That's an interesting, remark about khulud. Khulud is eternity. But it says, لا يبغون عنها حولا. And they do not wish to steer away from it or to change their status or their state. What is the significance of that? Anybody can tell me? Why is it saying those people who are enjoying paradise and they have eternity, they don't even have the wish to change their state? Anybody?
Like in
Go.
Maybe like sometimes people think like don't you get bored?
Excellent. This is exactly right. In fact, it's a very common objection from many philosophers. Not necessarily talking about Jannah, but they say even on earth, let's say if you're granted eternity, the first problem that occurs to them, at least to their mind, is being bored. Like are you going to have the same over forever? So boredom is the main objection. In fact, you see it from many philosophers. It's a common objection from philosophers. When it comes to the problem, they call it the problem of eternity. Should not be a problem, but the problem of eternity, they bring this objection. The objection of boredom. And this is why Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, of course Allah knows about all the objections, right? But subhanAllah, this is just a little hint there, right? You can use it, you can take it, you can understand it, if you like. And He's telling you ahead of time, don't worry about that objection. Those people will not even wish that, or will not wish to change their state. Very good. Very good. Yeah.
logically, if the philosophers go to the point of thinking and comprehending eternity, and when Allah says this, and other places like each day is better than the previous day, how they still bored of?
So it's not, like I said, it's not necessarily that they're arguing about Jannah per se. Again, they could imagine eternity here on the earth, on this earth. But still, I think the problem is the limitation of the human mind, because they might think that even though I have the perfect life, that perfect life is repeating over and over again, forever, non-stop. That's how they imagine boredom. But like you said, you could imagine a different scenario where every day is better than the day before, or different than the day before. Like no one says, again, it's because of the human limitation. You might imagine that you are in the most perfect state, so it has to be the same every day. But I can imagine a different state where every day is different than the other day, than the day before. But our limit of imagination could prevent us from thinking that. But it is valid, it's plausible that every day is different.
It's like if you take Allah away from the equation.
Then it becomes totally correct, actually. That objection becomes totally correct, yes. Because we're humans, I mean, we're creative in some sense, but we're not that creative. To be able to come up with a different day every day for eternity. We can't be that creative, yes.
What if it's the same day, but you just don't remember it?
That's another possibility. Like I said, that's a really good one. All these are possible, especially when Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is counted in the equation, yes. In fact, because you're Muslims, you've become more creative already because of like that. You know, that's a big part of the equation, right? But yes, if you imagine just humans living on earth forever, yeah, I mean, how many possible ways can you come up with? 1 million? Well, the 1,000,001 will be boring. Okay. All right. So the last two ayat, I think, or so, right? Yeah. They're now different. We're not talking about, Jannah or Jahannam anymore. But this is talking about, one is talking about Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, one of his attributes, as we're going to see. And the other one is talking about Prophet Muhammad. And what a nice conclusion of the surah. So one is describing one of the attributes of Allah, and the other one is describing the Prophet ﷺ in a very succinct manner, as we're going to see. So the ayah talking about Allah, or one of the attributes of Allah. قُلْ لَوْ كَانَ الْبَحْرُ مِدَادًا لِكَلِمَاتِ رَبِّي لَنَفِدَ الْبَحْرُ قَبْلَ أَن تَنْفَدَ كَلِمَاتُ رَبِّي. Say, if the sea was the ink, so that's, you have to imagine that. And here, al-bahr, it says, the sea, which includes every sea. All right, it's not one sea, it's the sea. So all, like you can imagine all the water on earth. And not just even on earth. In fact, there's a different ayah, not in the surah, might be in Surah Luqman, I think. It says, imagine that every tree on earth, you make pens or pencils, whatever, out of every tree on earth. You can imagine how much you can make, how many pens or how many pencils. And he says, and you have a sea that is, that has like 7 seas behind it. So basically it's telling you so many seas, like you don't have to start counting because we don't even know how big those seas are. But the point is, no matter how much you have ink or how much you have pen or pencil, the words of Allah will never run out. They're always so it's basically talking about how many are the words of Allah. Likewise here, لو كان البحر مدادا لكلمات ربي, if the whole sea was ink for the words of my Lord, then the sea will run out before the words of Allah will run out. وَلَوْ جَئْنَا بِمِثْلِهِ مَدَدًا, even if we bring another sea and another sea. Again, it's talking about the fact that the words of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, you cannot count them, basically. Now, part of that also is not that this is just referring to, say, the speech of Allah. It's also referring to how much Allah deserves praise. So here, basically, essentially, it's saying, no matter how much you praise Allah, it's not going to be enough. No matter how many words you say to praise Allah, and this is everybody, no matter how many words we use to praise Allah, that's not going to be enough. And this is why there's a dua, beautiful one. I don't know if you heard it before. It says, Allahumma inni la uhsi thana'an alayk anta kama athnayta ala nafsik. I cannot count, if I want to thank you, if I want to praise you, I cannot count enough words. But it is sufficient in the words you praise yourself with. أنت كما أثنيت على نفسك. Essentially it's saying only Allah can count how much praise He deserves. So that's one of the meanings of this ayah. Okay, last ayah before we break. This is about Prophet Muhammad ﷺ. Very important. It summarizes the reality, the nature of Prophet Muhammad ﷺ. Because there is sometimes you see some confusion about, like some Muslims might say Prophet ﷺ is nur, is light. He might be around. You hear from some people. I'm not going to mention the names of the sects, but people have differed. Some people have differed as to the nature of Prophet Muhammad ﷺ. Some even might call him, like might make dua to him or ask him for something. So look at how the Quran describes the Prophet. Not me or you or anyone else. It says, قُلْ إِنَّمَا أَنَا بَشَرٌ مِثْلُكُمْ. Number one, say I'm nothing but. When you say the word إِنَّمَا, this word إِنَّمَا تُفِيدُ الْحَصْرِ. I'm nothing but. Hasr means you limit, you restrict the description of the Prophet ﷺ to one thing. What is it? He said, I'm nothing but a human like you. Can you be more explicit than that? So this is one aspect of the Prophet ﷺ. His humanity, his humanness, if you like. Humanity could mean something different. His human nature is asserted here, is clear, it's obvious. There's no dispute about it. And he says, mithlukum, like you. Like, just to make sure we all understand his nature. So he's not divine in any way. Right? قُلْ إِنَّمَا, again, قُلْ إِنَّمَا أَنَا بَشَرٌ مِثْلُكُمْ. Say, I'm nothing but. That's one limitation, one restriction. I'm nothing but a human. The second one, mithlukum, just like you. Okay, you might say, okay, then what is the difference? Now comes the difference. But it's important to assert that first. That when it comes to his nature, he's a human exactly like us. The difference, yuha ilay. But the difference is, I receive revelation. Prophet Muhammad receives revelation. That is a distinction. Not in his nature, right? And this is important, not only because of how people went astray or went overboard with Isa alayhi salam, with Jesus, but also some Muslims and how they describe or could describe Prophet Muhammad alayhi salam. So it's very important to, and this ayah is very, very like specific and very concise in the description. This assertion of the humanness, the human nature of Prophet Muhammad alayhi salam, but at the same time, the distinction, you cannot say I'm equal to the Prophet alayhi salam. You're not equal to the Prophet. Why? Because he was chosen. That's why we call him Mustafa. Mustafa means he is the chosen one. He's chosen. How? He's chosen to receive revelation. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala chose him, did not choose anyone else to receive this great, great blessing. The words of Allah, the revelation. Yuha ilayya. So that is the big, big, big distinction. And of course, part of the wahi, أَنَّمَا إِلَهُكُمْ إِلَهُ وَاحِدٌ. The major part of the wahi is the fact that your Lord is one. Only one Lord is worthy of worship. إِلَهُكُمْ إِلَهُ وَاحِدٌ. The one deity worthy of worship is Allah. So now the end, the finale, the last, advice, principle, if you like. فَمَنْ كَانَ يَرْجُو لِقَاءَ رَبِّهِ فَلْيَعْمَلْ عَمَلًا صَالِحًا وَلَا يُشْرِكْ بِعِبَادَةِ رَبِّهِ أَحَدًا. And what a great, great conclusion. It kind of summarizes our relationship to Allah. It kind of summarizes how we practice Islam. So it says the one who hopes to meet Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, obviously in a good way, in a good state. You want to meet Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in a good state? There's two conditions. فَلْيَعْمَلْ عَمَلًا صَالِحًا وَلَا يُشْرِكْ بِعِبَادَةِ رَبِّهِ أَحَدًا. These two conditions are the conditions for any action to be accepted. No action will be accepted without these two conditions. One, the action has to be correct. And the other, it has to be sincere. Let me repeat, and you see that in these two conditions here. It says, فَلْيَعْمَلْ عَمَلًا صَالِحًا وَلَا يُشْرِكْ بِعِبَادَةِ رَبِّهِ أَحَدًا. He should not associate anyone else with Allah in his worship, in her worship. That is the sincerity part. You only do it for the sake of Allah. You only pray for the sake of Allah. You don't pray for the sake of anyone else. You don't pray to show off. When you give zakat, you do it for the sake of Allah. You don't do it to impress this man or this woman. When you fast, you do it for the sake of Allah. That is the condition of sincerity, which is لا يشرك بعبادة ربها. You don't associate anyone else with Allah. You do it only for the sake of Allah. That is the condition of sincerity. The other condition, فَلْيَعْمَلْ عَمَلًا صَالِحًا. His action has to be pious or righteous, meaning it has to be correct, meaning it has to be according to the sunnah of the Prophet ﷺ. How he taught us to pray, how he taught us to fast, how he taught us to give charity, and on and on and on. So these are the two conditions. One, it has to be sincere, and one has to do with Allah, one has to do with the Prophet. The first condition, I do it for the sake of Allah. The second condition, I do it the way the Prophet did it, ﷺ. I do it according to the Sharia of the Prophet, ﷺ. His way, his method, his path, his sunnah. Okay, that's it. So this is basically the end of Surat al-Kahf. I hope whoever lasted, and some of you I know came in the middle and then left, and some, mashallah, were attending almost all the time. I hope all of you benefited from the tafsir of Surat Kahf, and like I said, you can ask questions on the group if you like. If we don't have time now, because I think we have to break for adhan, right? It's time for adhan, right? So you can ask questions maybe on the group if you still have questions. And I think there'll be one more homework. And I'm thinking if I have time, I might give an exam. We'll see. But otherwise, I hope you all benefited from it, and that we could use this knowledge, inshallah, in our life. And obviously, any feedback as well, any feedback you have, you can send it. Maybe we'll do a survey too. But you're welcome to send a feedback regardless. But thank you very much, and jazakumullah khair. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah wa barakatuh.